The Romans believed this flame was the soul of their city. At the center of the city stood the Temple of the Eternal Flame. The Romans believed this flame was the soul of their city. If the sacred fire ever died, Rome feared disaster.
Only 6 women in Rome were trusted to protect it.
The Vestal Virgins, keepers of Rome's sacred fire. Theirs was a duty that terrified an empire. Girls from noble Roman families were brought before the priests.
Sacred flame, eternal Rome. We offer this incense. We ask for your protection. They were sworn to serve the goddess Vesta for 30 years. For 3 decades, they would guard the sacred flame. The first 10 years were spent learning the sacred traditions.
They learned the rituals that protected the city of Rome.
Then came 10 years, guarding the eternal flame.
Day and night, the fire had to remain alive.
And the final 10 years were spent teaching the next Vestals.
Each dawn began beside the sacred flame. They fed the flame with sacred wood.
The fire had to burn through every night.
If the sacred fire died, Rome feared the worst. For the Romans, the flame meant the safety of the empire.
Beyond the temple, Vestal Virgins held unusual power. When they passed, even powerful men moved aside.
A Vestal could even save a condemned prisoner.
They owned property and lived with rare freedom. But their lives were bound by a sacred vow. Each year, Rome gathered for the sacred festival of Vesta.
The festival was called Vestalia.
Women walked barefoot to honor the goddess. They carried offerings of bread and grain. Inside the temple, the Vestals led the sacred rites.
Yet the life of a Vestal was bound by a sacred vow.
Clad. They swore to remain pure for 30 years.
For Rome believed their purity protected the city.
But breaking the vow was the gravest crime.
And the punishment was feared across Rome.
When a Vestal was accused, Rome fell silent. The judgment belonged to the Pontifex Maximus.
If found guilty, The sentence was terrifying. A Vestal could not be executed by blood. So Rome chose a darker ritual. The condemned Vestal was led beyond the city walls. They walked toward a place called Campus Celeratus. There, a small chamber waited beneath the earth. Inside were bread, water, and a single oil lamp.
The Vestal descended into the darkness alone.
Once inside, the ladder was removed. The stone entrance was sealed forever. No blood was shed in this punishment.
For her body was still considered sacred.
And Rome returned to its uneasy silence.
Yet inside the temple, the sacred fire still burned.
For centuries, Vestal Virgins kept their silent watch. They witnessed wars, emperors, and the rise of Rome. But the ancient gods would not rule forever. In time, Rome itself would change. By the 4th century, Rome had changed. The old gods slowly lost their power. The emperor ordered the ancient rituals to end. The Temple of Vesta was finally closed. And the sacred flame burned for the last time. When the flame died, 1,000 years ended.
The Vestal Virgins disappeared into history. The temple slowly fell into silence.
But the legend of the sacred flame survived. For centuries, it had guarded the heart of Rome.
Today, the temple stands only as ruins.
The marble columns still whisper ancient stories. Here once burned the sacred fire of Rome. For 1,000 years, it guarded the city.
And the Vestal Virgins kept watch in silence.
Empires rise, and even sacred fires fade. But their stories still echo through Rome. The temple once guarded the heart of an empire. And the Vestal Virgins were its silent guardians. The sacred flame of Rome lives now only in memory.